Hello, may it please the court. My name is Michael Testa, and along with my co-counsel, Joy Mithami, we represent the petitioners in this case. In my argument, I will prove that an alert by a well-trained drug detection dog establishes probable cause to search a vehicle. Probable cause is a flexible, common-sense standard that depends on fair probabilities versus hard standards. It is based off of police officers' experience and instincts, not infallibility. This court has recognized that there is a difference between reliability and infallibility. Informants do not have to be infallible, but rather information presented by informants is considered reliable when it turns on common sense conclusions about human behaviors. For millennia, dogs' superior sense of smell has been utilized by humans and has been recognized as an invaluable asset in the canine-human partnership. There are very viable reasons to why law enforcement officers use dogs to detect contraband. There is no national standard for certification of drug detection dogs present, but adequacy of a drug detection dog, such as Randy, should be determined by the performance of the dog in the field.
So should we keep records of the performance of the dog?
Evidence in performance testing and the completion of training and records of the dog and the handler is adequate to determine if the dog is reliable or not.
I thought in this case, though, we didn't have all those records.
Officer Tram and Randy have previous certification records that were completed before the actual detection, but...
And can you go into just brief detail about what exactly those trainings were by?
Sure, they completed a 40, Officer Tram and Randy, drug detection dog, completed a 40-hour training program conducted by a neighboring police department, and since have completed training program annually. Under a previous handler, Randy has completed a 120-hour drug detection training course and was also certified by Drug Beat Canine Certifications, which is a private organization.
But the training was under, the 120-hour training was under a previous handler, right?
Yes.
And that certification was expired, right?
Yes, and although that certification was under a previous handler, we affirm that in terms of reliability of a dog, it's tested to be reliable under any handler. It's under that training does not have to necessarily begin with training with a specific person.
Okay.
Officer Tram trains Randy in detecting drugs for 4 hours every week, and the pair attends a 40-hour training seminar every year. Records say, according to Officer Tram, that Randy's performance was satisfactory 100% of the time, and Tram deploys Randy in the field about 5 times a month.
So we know that there are they went through training and standards, but there aren't any field performance records in this case, right?
Field performance records are not present now.
Don't you think they should be?
Well, they're not the most accurate measures of a dog's reliability.
But they are a measure of reliability. And if the trial court is going to try and judge the reliability of a dog, like it did in this case, doesn't it make sense for them to have all the information possible?
Well, I will answer your question by giving you this. In an uncontrolled field environment, it is harder to tell whether an alert that does not result in an officer's recovery of drugs is true, quote, false, positive. With the training being conducted in controlled circumstances, which is what we favor, a dog's ability to find and signal the presence of drugs can be accurately measured.
So what we're saying is that we just have to rely on the standards that the state sets?
Not necessarily.
For training purposes, I mean.
Yes, state standards.
State standards which vary widely from state to state.
Exactly.
But there is no specific standard.
There is no
in
national
Florida.
standard.
Well, in Florida, there's no state standard either.
Flamingo.
Flamingo. Sorry, in the state of Flamingo.
What are you talking about? Just insane.
So in the state of Flamingo, there's no state standard. This is true. I'm not quite sure.
Don't you think there should be a state standard? Don't we have to make sure that dogs are reliable enough?
I don't think it's up to the judges to determine whether or not a dog's reliability can be set as reliable or not, but
Well,
rather the police department and who is actually handling these dogs every day.
Well, a police officer can say that this dog is reliable, but if it's not reliable, then there is a constitutional violation, and that means the judge has to get involved.
That can be the instance, but law enforcement officers have a strong incentive to make sure their dogs are reliable for mainly two reasons. One of those reasons being the fact that they want to be accurate with drug detection, and number two is for their safety. Traffic stops are one of the most dangerous operations conducted by law enforcement officers in the nation. So they want to be sure that they're accurate, and they want to be sure they're safe. There's no incentive for an officer to have an infallible dog present.
Even if it's not the... Well, no, you can carry on. Never mind.
Field activity tests are not the most accurate, as I said. With training being conducted in controlled circumstances, a dog's ability to find and signal the presence of drugs can be accurately measured. In the field...
I thought that we didn't have like a set percentage of the time that the dog accurately alerts. I thought it's just based on what you said. It was we should go off pretty much what the officer says if it's reliable.
Yeah, the officer in the training program. So basically, if an officer has a dog, it's trained. The officer says yes, it's trained. The police department says yes, it's trained. It's went through so and so training. And now we train him. Officer.
Should they be required to provide those records though?
They can most certainly ask for those records. Doesn't necessarily mean so. There's a certain point at which it can be cut off. I believe that if it goes into what kind of training occurred, I believe that's too far of a realm for the defendants to ask.
But we're dealing with the reliability of the dog. If we can't ask how reliable this dog is,
You most certainly can ask. And
how do we judge it though if we don't have
information-
history of the training?
information provided by the law enforcement officers can be provided.
But what's the information being provided?
Information as in certain pass or fails, satisfactory, the tests that went through the training. But when you go into specifics, I believe it's not the duty of the court to oversee this, but rather the police department is sufficient.
All right, thank you.
This concludes my argument. If there are no further questions, Your Honors, I would now refer to my co-counsel.
Any questions?
I think we just add this to their time now.
Yeah, I don't think we will lose it.
Joy, you're going to have 10 minutes since she said a minute after.